Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to a little video today about a Japanese monster film franchise that I really enjoy. Now it's a lot popular lately with things like Godzilla being really sort of popular, and everyone sort of talks about Godzilla and all this kind of thing. But there was another one that sort of came out around the same time, called GAMERA, which is another sort of a giant colossus monster. But this time it's a turtle. It's like a giant sort of turtle. Anyway, it didn't really get a lot of sort of like it's really popular in Japan, and it's probably got its own sort of fan base around the world, but it's nowhere near as big or as popular as Godzilla. But to me, it's still a great franchise. There's only been, I believe, only 12 movies in the franchise. It started off, let's have a look at the first one. Yeah, it started off a long time ago. I think it was in the 60s. I'm sure it was. I don't think it's as old as Godzilla film, but it's not far off. Let's have a look at the date on it. If this has the date on it. No, yes, that's not it. No, it's not the date. It doesn't actually have the official date on this cover of when it actually came out. But this was the original film, and it's called Gamera, the Giant Monster. And he was like very much like Godzilla, and this film is very much similar to the first Godzilla film. Whereas the first Godzilla film, Godzilla was like a villain, and so was Gamera in this one. He was more like a villain, but they kind of left it on like a kind of ending where he becomes sort of friendly because he saves a little boy in it. So he saved a little boy. So then it became that he was actually a friendly giant monster. And it plays out really well. It's very, very similar to the original sort of Godzilla. Nowhere near as good. This is done on a lot smaller budget. This is done by a different company. Obviously, Toho did Godzilla. And this is a different company that sort of like wanted to do something very similar. And they come up with Gamera. And it's a really cool film. It is in black and white. And I think it really holds the atmosphere to the film, and it really, because it's quite dark and it's quite subtle black and white, it really sort of adds to the atmosphere of the movie, which is really, really cool. Really enjoyed it. And then it made a couple of really good sequels afterwards. They were really good. Gamera versus Barugon, and Gamera versus, is it Gaius? And that was these two. But these were a little went a bit more sort of child orientated. It started to go that sort of direction, but they're really, really cool. And there's some of it's got like a little bit of gore in it, not actual blood, but obviously Gamera's blood is like green and blue or something, but it is quite ferocious at some points, and you think, bloody hell, it's a children's sort of film. So they were aiming for a children's audience, because of the success of the first one, and because of the young child that was born, that was saved in the first one. They wanted to go down that route, and so they made these two sequels, but they were still quite good and quite dark. Then it went through a bit of a bad patch, and they started to release sequels that weren't as good. But tell you the truth, though, Gamera versus Virus, I actually really like. It gets a lot of slating because of the creature. That's him there. I actually quite like it. It's pretty cool, and I enjoyed the film. It did make a little comeback with Gamera versus Jaeger, which was the next one after these two. That was a bit better than these two. These two were a bit of a flop and not very good. And then they made that one, which was like the last one in the sort of that franchise. And then there was no other one made for like 10 years. And then they made this one called Super Monster, Gamera Super Monster. And it's the worst one, to be honest, out of all the Gamera films. And they were on the show your sort of region sort of time in the sort of 60s. Like I said, and there was like a 10-year gap, and in about 1980 they brought out that one, the Super Monster, and it was absolutely, it's not a very good film. They tried to bring back all of the creatures from all the earlier ones and into this sort of like amazing film, but it wasn't. I think it's getting down to budget restraint, and then it disappeared. But then come along the 90s and it came back again, a bit like sort of Godzilla, because that did the sort of same. And it came back with the Guardian of the Universe, which is this one. And this is fantastic. This is on par with the original first one. Because obviously this was made in the 90s, I believe. Early 90s. And so things have moved on, hadn't they? You know, and technology moved on and effects have moved on. And this came out. And this, I think, is a real sort of like quite an important film in the Gamera franchise, because it's sort of established him again. He's not really such a villain, but he's not as good guy as he was in the other one, you know, like a child-friendly one. This is more of an adult sort of orientated film, and it was a lot more darker and a lot more sort of sinister and violent, and there's some really good sort of like effects in it, and it's a brand new sort of Gamera. He looks really, really cool in this. It looks a lot more sort of not so fake as it does in some of the earlier ones. It looks like a really cool sort of version of the monster, and it's brilliant. And that went on to form a trilogy of films. They did 2 and 3 as well, which are these ones. And I'll tell you, my favourite one is definitely number 2. I absolutely love number 2, Attack of Legion. It's a really cool monster flick. Or is it, what do they call it in Japan? Is it Kaiju? It's a really cool film. Yeah, so that actually ended up being like a trilogy. And then they ended them all off with the Brave, which was the last one out of the more modern sort of Gamera sort of films. And they haven't made any more since. They've only done 12 films. There's only 4 in the sort of modern era, and then there's 8 in the sort of older sort of version of the films. But they are really cool. If you're a huge Godzilla fan and you really appreciate Godzilla, especially if you appreciate the old sort of Toyo Godzilla, not necessarily the American version. The American ones are good. They're really cool films. But obviously they've used massive millions and millions of budget. These are low budget. This is a guy in a suit. This is also a guy in a suit. But if you love these, you will really enjoy Gamera. I recommend you checking them out, because at the moment, in places like HMV and that, they're on sale. You can get the box set. There's 2 box sets. There's one with the earlier films. Got 8 films in it, and it's $29.99. And there's one with the more sort of later films, the ones that I actually prefer, and that's also $29.99. So while they're at a good price, I'd grab them if you're really interested in them. But they are definitely worth seeking out. They are a good watch. The reason why I'm talking about them is because I've been doing quite a few Godzilla reviews, haven't I, over the last few months. I mean, last year I went through the whole American ones, didn't I, that got released. And this year I've been through a few others. I've done Shin Godzilla. I've done a couple of against Mecha Godzilla and things like that. And I want to do some more. I want to delve into some Gamera. So what I'm going to do is a Gamera week soon. So this is like a prequel or sort of warm up to the Gamera week, just to give you a heads up. You're thinking, what on earth's Gamera? But now you know it's a Japanese monster like Godzilla, but he's a giant turtle. And so what I'll probably do, I'll probably review the very first one, and I might do the two of the trilogy in the latter ones, because I think they're really good, and I'll sort of bring them to your sort of like radar, if you like. But anyway, check them out if you get a chance.